So today we have Jodi and Kerrie with us from Quantimama, and we're Pemby and I are both pretty excited to have you both with us today to talk to our families and anyone on the in the Sunshine Coast community that is interested in your perspectives on unschooling and homeschooling and what your journeys have been and what you do at Quantimama. So if you could both introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what Quantumama is and who Jodi and Kerrie are from your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for this opportunity. We absolutely love talking with families and particularly parents because that's where our interest lies. So I'm Jodi.
I'm Kerrie.
Yep, very good. Got that right. We're off to a good start. So Quantumama, or as we'll go forward, calling it QM because I love an acronym.
She does.
I do. Was really born out of it was actually someone that asked me to be their doula, and I went, I'm not up overnight, thank you, I have 4 children. And that then birthed a birth course, which then birthed, I guess, an awareness of how to be more present as a parent. And when you become more present as a parent, you start changing your decision-making because you're noticing what's happening for your kids. So we're very grateful for the squishiness of the last 4 to 5 years. We're up to 5 now.
I think we are.
Losing count. Anyway, what that meant was that Kerrie and I were in community together anyway, so we hang out. But what we did was we made the decision to give our kids the option to change up their education. And I say that in a particular manner because we didn't say, come on, you're going to homeschool. We actually gave the kids the opportunity to decide on what they wanted to do. And it was a pretty easy decision at that point because there was remote learning going on in Victoria and they were like student yo-yos. It was a very average product for the kids in and out of school and whipped out like almost the day before. So
Yeah.
in terms of a space for trust and security and certainty, that was completely absent for that year. And it's been, I think, shown that it was very damaging for many students and children alike. So what happened then was we started talking to people who were interested in homeschooling because we did that for our kids. Kerrie was a 50-50. I got all 100% of my children out. My 4 kids came out of school, but Kerrie had one in the system and one out of the system. And she can obviously talk further to that. But what we did was as we went through the process of adjusting to a new rhythm and keeping your kids home from state-funded education, as my sister calls it, is a vast difference for the rhythm of the family. We noticed what we had to shift, and as a consequence, we wrote Take the Leap program along with my husband, McGill, and we really just birthed that. It's out of our experience, and we became acutely aware that the sticking point for most families is us parents and how we need to deprogram ourselves because we come into these I guess, parenting arrangements and decision making based on our own experiences. And some of it is, well, I had to do it, so you're going to as well, or beliefs around where education must occur and where some areas are unqualified, shall we call it? And we have reprogrammed that. And so now it is absolutely our commitment to our community to help as many willing parents that want to come on this, I say journey. It's such a cliche term, but
it works.
This journey with us, we're about unshackling you from your beliefs and empowering you to the awareness that you have that inner knowledge. You know what to do. We know that about ourselves now, and we know that's true of everyone. So we want to be a catalyst for that. Keza.
Yeah, great, Jodes. Thanks for that. I came on board because I was probably not only in community, as Jodi said, with her family, but really, I guess one of the first graduates of the Take the Leap program as well. And I wanted to do it because I wanted to see what, had been put together as a process, although I was walking it by her side as well. But and once I did it, it was just like, oh, hell yeah, Like, it just became so clear to me. I really got my why. And I had, as Jodi said, 50-50. I had a son who was at school and doing well, but just not loving it. Like, just kind of going, what's it all for? What are we doing this for? Why would I spend, time in a math class and listen to a teacher for 50 minutes and then get sent home and do homework when I could go home and kick the ball? Like, he was really questioning things. And, I was really open to that because I'd done the take the leap and just sort of saw the benefit of just not having them in school. And then I had a daughter who was going sort of through the second part of secondary school and was very attached to it, very familiar with it. I wouldn't say comfortable, but it was just that it was all she knew. Yet, sadly, I think was damaged by the system, and her self-belief, her confidence, her love of learning, self-awareness, all of that just got completely destroyed. So I'm really about advocating for our kids, really about seeing children as individuals and that the school system doesn't treat them as individuals. So I really feel like we as parents must advocate for our children's needs. And there's a lot of kids out there who are struggling. Parents who are struggling and not sure where to go and what to do. So when I have conversations with parents, it's very much about just focusing on the needs of the kids, being aware that we're often the ones that are getting in the way of what's right for them. So, when Quantimama was birthed from Jodes, I was very keen to come on board and to just support parents, support families, support our community, but most of all support the kids who are really struggling to the point where they just will be completely put off learning for life through that process. So yeah, I'm on board.
She's excited.
Yeah, I love it.
She's like Big Kev. So the thing that we have done now is like we were talking about Take the Leap because that's our sort of signature program for parents, and it was transformational for us. We did everything we've written in the program.
Yeah.
But we have a podcast that you can have a listen to. So we have sort of two, one sits under the other, but one is about alchemising education. And so if you find that you enjoy what you hear today, and we will absolutely make this as relevant to the attendees as we can, please feel welcome to even dive into some of those potty conversations. There's a fair bit of laughing that goes on as well because we do try and suck the fun out of life in the nicest way possible, get the juice out of life. But it's also, it's about creating some food for thought. And so sometimes our conversations can be challenging.
Yeah.
But I guess what we want to do is we show up very honestly. So we are very honest about our shortcomings, our mistakes, and we don't want anyone to not have their own mistakes because that's where the richness of learning is. But we also want to empower people to maybe hop, step and jump over some of them that can feel a bit bigger, those missteps in parenting. And I just want to assure people I'm not sitting here up on my pedestal going, now thou shalt.
Together.
We are really about our kids keep teaching us and, that's still happening in my household, So all four of the kids are still homeschooled. Homeschooled is a kind of funny term. We don't tend to use it too much. I say they're at home. So they very much lead their own teaching. And so we'll happily talk to that sort of stuff in terms of how home education can look. But we're really also keen to hear what your burning questions are, because it might be that we've got some ideas. There are certainly some myths out there about, I guess, what we see as the blocks for parents to make a change. And we're not saying just take your kids out of school. We're saying make a change for something. I think the current product of institutional education, you hear it said all the time, it's broken. It's not broken. It's by design and it's harming our kids. For my kids, they were just normal kids. They were good kids that teachers liked.
Yeah,
and then when they were given the opportunity, they went, I'd like to try something different. But more compelling than that was as time went on, they started unpacking everything that had occurred to them. And it would come up at random times. And I still am surprised at the stuff that comes up. And I'm not doing this to scare people. I'm just saying that these environments are not always the most harmonious. Having said that, I'm not the most harmonious parent sometimes too. And, after 7 o'clock, I'm a much nicer parent with a glass of wine. So, we pick and choose our battles, but what we do is when we know better, we do better.
Yeah.
So it's about that informed decision making. And so that's where our interest is. How do we get you more informed about your personal set of instructions, your intuition, what you know to be so about you and your child, and your options. And that's why obviously we love this conversation with Jono and what's happening at Apogee. It's because it's a completely different take on how to have a childhood and learn at the same time, rather than get this education. We get to learn all the way through. So so that's essentially us in a nutshell. But John, I'm really conscious, would you like questions answered
So
here?
the way I've got about half a page worth of questions just based off what you two both just said in that period there. So
Yep.
what we'll do is I'll ask a couple of questions to start us off, and then
Yep.
if any of people on this call have their own questions, if in the reaction or chat box, whichever it is, if they just pop their hand up, and then as those hands start popping up, then we'll allow them to take the floor towards the end, if that's okay with everybody on here. And if no hands pop up, then we'll just chat away, because we've already had one go at doing this on our own, and we chatted for over 2 hours. So
I have no
we've,
doubt it happens easily.
yeah, we've
So
got the capability to go all day if needed.
Yeah.
before we get into your question, I really love just taking a moment of mindfulness, because I think that it's something I start out my day planning to do, and then it just gets bumped down the list all the way to the end of the day when I'm in bed and I go, oh, crap, I forgot to meditate again. So what I love is super quick snatches of mindfulness. So if you'll indulge me, I'd love for us just to bring ourselves into this present moment and just take 2, 3, 4 breaths, whatever your speed is, but just bring your awareness into your body. Close down what's happening around you. Even if you need to keep your eyes open, just bring your awareness down into this present moment. And just tune into the fact that within your beautiful community of cells, there dwells the resonance of truth, your truth. And that's very powerful. When we really engage in that, it can show up in a myriad of ways. Just tuning in, having some trust in the fact that it exists there and it is completely accessible to you. So just using your breath and just saying thank you to yourself, that you can be the barometer of your own truth. And finally, just some acknowledgement and gratitude that you have created spaciousness to be present here, because I can see that we've got, a fair few of you joining us, and that's not nothing for the middle of a Thursday. So very much grateful for that presence as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Jodi. So, right off the very beginning, you said that your, I don't know if we'd call it goal, was to change up education, and that you looked at your children and thought, we want to let them decide. And this was something that Tembi and I are very much aligned with when you were making those realizations, because we saw COVID as a huge opportunity for education. We saw it as the kids are going to be at home, they're going to be given all this time, we're going to allow them to take the floor and unpack what it is that they are truly interested in. And then you went on to say that parents often have the ability of getting in the way. And what Tembi and I noticed, or started to begin to notice, is that, in fact, the entirety of the education system is the thing that's getting in the way. And instead of us looking at the children and saying, what is it that they want? What do they need? And setting a baseline of really high standards and setting the direction for them on of having a strong moral compass and those standards to achieve, that we were just taking it all away from them and saying, this is what you have to do and you have to do it now. But you decided to watch your kids. During that process, what did you begin to notice?
Yeah, I think this is where COVID was a gift because we obviously got to see their learning style through that remote learning. And I underestimated particularly my son's ability to learn kinesthetically, like just wanted to be immersed in a particular project, just like didn't want all the theory, didn't want to sit in front of the computer, didn't want to sit in class. He just wanted to be involved in things. So I think for me, one of the greatest gifts was actually just seeing what his learning style was, because I'd never really been in the classroom to really observe it apart from as a parent helper. And then even then it's sort of, I guess it's very scheduled and controlled, and, I only saw what I remember from school as well. So, my programming was strong around how kids are meant to learn and what the process was. So for me, knowing that my son best learned through experience, and just giving him projects that lit him up. And actually the other thing that I really learned was not telling him how to do things. He would say, Mum, let me do it. And you kind of go, of course, he wants to just do it and learn through doing. And every time I stepped in to try and guide him or doing what I thought was the right thing, and, trying to guide him in what he needed to learn, I just lost his interest. He just went, oh, he just tuned out, and he was no longer in control or empowered to learn in a way that lit him up. So that was something that was really stark as a lesson for me. And so that when we sort of started thinking about, one, how he learnt, but then two, what's the best learning environment, it just became so clear that the school environment wasn't working for him. Even though he was a great student, he always got great reports, he always got, good feedback. He could have just kept going. But then I just kind of went, this is not what I want for my child. This is not the person I want him to grow up to be. I didn't want a follower. I didn't want someone who just wanted to follow the rules and get told what to do, when to do it, how to do it. I suddenly realised that I was doing him a disservice by keeping him in that system, and that he wasn't allowed to thrive in that environment. So it became very clear to me that the skills that I wanted him to have at the end of his schooling was not being taught in the school environment. So it became a very clear, okay, we've got to change this. We've got to change this. And it was just purely by spending time with him and watching him and really listening to him that I got that.
And I think sometimes with that, you're not always going to hear what you want to hear.
Yes.
So it's about, I always say to my kids, if you ask a yes or no question, one of the options is no. So, how that unfolds has got to be the same for parents too. And I think circling back to your question and picking up on what Kerrie was talking about, for us, McGill and I were renovating a house. It was a pretty comprehensive renovation, and as a consequence, we weren't present. So what happened was our kids came out of school, and it's just, how these things happen. You go, wow, that was such a gift. Like when you get the perspective on it, you're like, whoa, I didn't realize how good that was. And I talk a lot about this now. Kids that are coming out of an institution, and this applies for all. In fact, when I left ambulance, I need to have the same experience. When you come out of an institution that you've been doing for a particular amount of time, and for kids, it's for a majority of their life since they start, institutional education from 3 or 4 now, which is wild, you must have a circuit breaker, because what's happened in there is that you have become compliant in doing a certain rhythm that doesn't always honour your yeses and nos at all. In fact, you walk with the sheep in that sense. So you're with the herd and you're doing as you're told for the most part, and you might get some enjoyment out of that, but within that becomes a program of efficiency and we're doing this now, whether you like it or not. Now, kids, when they come home from school, and they now have the option to home educate, and parents go, "What do you want to learn? What do you want? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do this?" Now, can you imagine someone that has lost their safety of their rhythm, even if the rhythm was a bit shit? Sorry, I don't know if we're swearing, bit shite. If that is the case for them, where is their safety if we suddenly go, "Oh, we're taking that off. We'll take the pressure off. Now I'm going to give you a barrage of options, because I love you, about what you can do." For that child, for any individual, that must feel like overwhelm, or certainly an intensity that they weren't bargaining for. So they thought they were going to get this freedom, and in fact, we've met them with a higher dose of energy where they have to participate. So what happened for us, which was an accident, just kind of crappy absent parenting on my part, was that my kids had a massive circuit breaker where I went, "Just don't burn the house down." And that was it. So that was the ground rule from them. And they, I've said this a few times, they listened to audiobooks for an impolite amount of time. And I actually have said to Kez before, I actually lost count. It could even be like 6 months where we just
Did nothing.
we were doing nothing. They would go outside and play, and then they'd come back in and listen to their audiobooks, and then they'd go back outside and play, and then they'd go back inside and listen. And that was their rhythm day in, day out, because we weren't even doing a lot of structured sports and things like that. I mean, it was during lockdown, so it was a completely different world we were in. So what I realised, though, was that all of us, when we deinstitutionalise ourselves, need that circuit breaker. And you'll hear that when you talk to people who are in the home education space, it's about a month per year of education. And that is kind of true, except one size does not fit all.
It's a guide.
So it's a guide, and it's about deprogramming the parents out of expectation of, why is little Johnny not excited about this opportunity? Because little Johnny's still finding his place in this new world that he's in, where he suddenly is a decision maker, where he was never empowered to be the decision maker. So if I can suggest anything in terms of making any kind of transition with this stuff, again, looking at it through the prism of your child who's going to experience the change, what will feel safe and secure? And sometimes containment is part of that. Part of that, it can be a lack of expectations, a different kind of rhythm that feels very gentle. And because we did that, we were empowering the kids. We introduced things like, we're going to learn how to run a household, because that's a lifelong skill, and it was useful to the family as a community. So now the kids run the household. Someone does all the washing, someone does all the dishes. They all share different nights of the week for cooking. Someone does the rubbish bin, someone does the chooks and looks after the animals. Like, literally, I don't do any of it. And which is pretty sweet, I have to say. It's a good reason to have 4 children. But because of that, firstly, they're skilled up with life, but also, again, by accident, they got into a rhythm of learning that felt safe and secure because it was in the home space. And then as they were ready to find that love of learning through self-direction, they then started expanding out, going, okay, what's outside of the home front? What else do I want to learn? And starting to bring that into their daily rhythm. And it has been this confirming accidental experiment with my kids, where I have seen how impactful self-directed learning can be, and the level of maturity and wisdom and intuition that they bring in. They have access to this so fast, so much faster than us, because their programming is not as great, but all of it can be reprogrammed. So if you think of yourself as like a computer, the computer does not differentiate between a Word file that was created 10 years ago versus a Word file that was created 2 minutes ago. You literally just need to go in and allow for that reprogramming to happen for the betterment, and then you hit save and you walk a different path. So, yeah, so I'd say that was kind of where we came from in terms of that transition. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely. One thing I wrote down that I found really interesting was that 1 month per year of schooling, which means I started going to school when I was about 5 years old and have pretty much been in it till the age of 35. So I've got about 30 months of deprogramming
Yep.
left in me. I've been out of the I've been out of the system for about 3 or 4, so I've got about 2.5 years left in front of me. But as your children were deprogramming themselves, and they were doing, to us, they sound like mundane tasks, doing the dishwasher, doing all the household chores. But for a child, these are foundational skills where they're using their hands, they're beginning to process their own rhythm of doing these things, which then they can, like you said, take out into the real world. When your children were going through that process, what were some of the key markers you started to notice in your children when you were like, okay, they're starting to get it now. Things are starting to happen, and you can see their curiosity and their excitement for life coming back.
I think when they start showing up with that space of initiative,
Yes.
and forward thinking and planning, so they're operating within the community. Because all I ever said to my kids, even when they were in school, and some of them were getting programmed into thinking they were dumb, which they weren't, they just didn't learn on that particular model that was being offered. But the thing is, I said, I just want you to be good humans. I actually don't care about your marks. I have a degree in media that, I paid for and didn't really use. And then I obviously did my diploma in ambulance paramedicine. And then I moved on to a bunch of other careers, and I just learnt on the job. And so this idea that you learn something and therefore you use it only in one way is nonsense, right? I'm a living, breathing example of that. And so I became a heightened awareness of what are the foundational things they need to learn within even this task, which is a level of accountability and a level of resourcefulness. Cooking is a great example. And what I worked out, one of my kids, my daughter, has a sweet tooth, a bit like Kerrie's. And when you want to foster things like cooking, because it is actually math, it is actually science, it is actually reading, so there's a lot of relevance to the educational curriculum that can happen just with cooking meals. But I could not, by hook or crook, convince her to cook dinner. I'm like, that would be useful. She's like, no, I'm happy to make the sweets. And I'm like, okay, sure, make the sweets. Because I decided just to, rather than pull on the rope and have a tug of war with her, I instead would step forward to her and go, all righto, because as she got confident with her cooking her sweets, she then in her own time started moving towards cooking dinners, and now they're getting more elaborate. So what it is that it's that thing of taking note on your children as they start doing things. They might not do it exactly as you want, but if they get to decide, then they build confidence in their own skill set, in their own pace of learning, and kids will learn at different times. And one of the things we do as a disservice is this weeing contest that we have with parents going, oh yeah, my little Sally, she learnt this within this kind of time. I'm like, well, cool. It was a vibrational match for her. But for other kids, it's not. It takes longer. And does that make them any less super ordinary? No, it doesn't. They're all amazing in their own little right because they're individuals. It's just there's not a vibrational match for that skill landing for them. So being a little bit relaxed about how that presents itself, how they skill up, and always noticing how they feel. I never said to my kids, I'm so proud of you. I say things like, are you proud of yourself? Let that direction of self and that self-esteem that they generate from themselves not come from an external source, but from their own inner voice. And I think that's where that really useful thing has happened. We feel very comfortable with saying that once you love learning, you'll pick up anything you're interested in. But what we tend to find is there must be relevance. I'm trying to teach myself CapCut. I already know other media stuff, but it's another app. But I have to come at it as I can learn anything I want. So it's almost like the Matrix, and you just plug in and you go, give me that skill set. We want that for our kids because they can pick up whatever they want. One of my kids now has been working and he's now going to learn how to do a tax return because, of course, they still take tax out for him, but they don't ever tell kids how to do that stuff. He doesn't need to be paying tax. So you can see the relevance. He's suddenly going to learn a whole lot of math stuff that is relevant to him because the government has been kindly collecting his money for him like a little Christmas saver. And now he's going to be able to access that. So there's a relevance. But could I just get him to sit down and do math? God, no. He just is not interested. So it's about the relevance. And when you look at adults, we very much learn the same way. Like, oh, I need to do that, so I better learn this, that, and the other.
The real world relevance is absolutely something that is missing when you're stuck in that industrial schooling model, because it's all predicated off what someone else is telling you to do. You're not showing up to the game every day saying, all right, well, this is the thing that I've been thinking about, and today I'm going to figure out how to put that into action. What we see in a classroom is that the children rock up every morning in that apathetic way of, well, I'm going to be told what to do today, so I don't really have to think about it. And then that becomes the hypnotic rhythm of our life, that I'll just let someone else do the thinking for me instead of doing the thinking myself.
And then, sorry, if I can just add then, and then when
Yeah.
the kids aren't behaving, or they're not sitting still, or they're not focusing, the kids are seen as there's something wrong with the kids. And that's the bit that really I get quite upset about. It's like, it's not the kids that's the problem. And then they have this sense of, well, what's wrong with me? And yeah, it's just that spiral.
Yeah, I've friends my age that have to this day consider themselves dumb or unworthy, or talk about what they were like in school, which is school is school. Life is completely different to what's happening out there. And it's funny that I have coach my friends through this cycle of, well, school taught you exactly what you're saying right now. And as I step into this new world of business, they're kind of coaching me through that. So it's this interesting dichotomy that we find of helping each other unpack some of the deficiencies that we both had from our time in schooling, because everyone's got one, and it's not what we're born with, it's actually imprinted on us from this place. There was one interesting thing that you said as parents, which I'm interested to hear about, is that you said you don't care about the marks. You weren't interested in that. You just wanted your children to be good people. And this is something that I'm conscious that a lot of families that send their children to school say that they don't care about the marks without realizing that that is still what their children are going out there and doing every day. They're working for the mark. So it's great that you don't care as a parent and you just want them to be a good person. But the reality of your child's day is that they are still working for this mark, which they don't care about. They don't even understand what it's for, but this is still what their daily existence is. So for your children, as they unschooled themselves and you worked out of the programming that you had experienced, what were their markers of success? What did they start to say, or what were their indicators of that sense of pride that you mentioned?
Yeah, I think because I'm sort of really deschooling my daughter who finished year 12 at a price to her health, but she finished. Still deschooling, for her and I think the marker of her success is about her contribution to her community, is how am I able to play a part of this community, and sort of seeing that, she does have a role to play within community. I think that was one of the really big markers of her success. I mean, of course, she went into an environment where she was constantly comparing herself to others. She was a people pleaser. She was a high achiever. But I think that didn't ultimately bring her that sense of satisfaction and that true sense of self within the world around her. So once she started to sort of see that she could contribute to society and to her community in a way that was meaningful and that felt good to her, that was, I think, one of the markers where she started to see, well, actually, I do have something to contribute and I do have something to offer. If I think about my son, it's really about, when he was making progress on his own projects and when he got to the end of it and then came up with something else he wanted to do. So I think the marker for him was definitely about just having that autonomy and having that freedom to really learn and do something that was meaningful to him. So it really comes back to having that place in your community or in your family or wherever it is that you are. It doesn't have to be, widespread. It doesn't have have to be international, national, whatever it is. It's just about knowing that you are making a difference to the lives of those people around you.
I think what I'm seeing in my kids right now, and it would be interesting to hear how other parents are going if they approach education in the same manner and parenting in the same manner, is that my kids are using their markers of success for the traction of their interests. So where I'm obviously speaking on their behalf, so I'm conscious that I might misrepresent them. But from my observation, what I'm noticing in them is that when they are lit up by something they're learning, and I can thinking of the two elder ones in this instance, the eldest, QK1, he was absolutely loving doing ninja class, but he's just actually a natural teacher as well. He naturally gets along well with younger kids. Obviously, it's the oldest of 4 siblings, but he has that beautiful, gentle, big heart that just is one that is very compassionate and thinks about other people. So it makes him, and he's a great communicator. So from that perspective, what led for him was that he ended up getting a job as a ninja coach, going through the cadet program. They recruit from within, which is kind of smart. And so from there, but he, like within 3 months, he's moved to just below the top rung. What was interesting was I really worked on holding my tongue, because I'm like, well, I don't want to make that a marker of success. I'm okay if he has that as a marker of success, but I don't want to be that person that puts that on him of going, you need to hustle to go up the, ascend the rungs in the organisation. And he just has been so. It was actually like he got just the biggest compliment from that. And I just thought that's his marker of success. And his other marker of success is this interest in going into a higher education within that field, which is a ticket if he wants to. He can go and get some kind of qualification, but he then gets to decide. My daughter, by comparison, loves horses. She manifested her own horse. That lasted 6 months, and then because I wouldn't help her at all with it, basically, because I said, this is your project, you get to own it, and yes, it's a huge project, but you get to decide. And she then went through the interesting decision-making of rehoming the horse, so she then suddenly didn't have a horse, and then she decided to get herself she's doing volunteer work at an equestrian centre and negotiated to get free riding lessons for her time. Now, she did that all on her own back. She asked me for some guidance, but she got to own that. And what's now transpired is that she's now becoming one of the coaches there. So it's really interesting that both these kids, as they're a bit older, their markers of success are ones they feel proud of to share. And I almost want to cry and wish I could bottle what it was like having her jump in the car after that session the other week. And she said, guess who's a coach now? Guess who's taking lessons now? And I was like, oh my God. She was so proud of herself. And, these are the moments of parenting that we often don't get to experience. In fact, we apply that accolade to our kids based on our value set. And even if we say, are you proud of yourself? Oh, you did well on NAPLAN or whatever, right? Are you proud of yourself? And as you say, the kids don't have a point of reference for that. They're like, well, I had to do it. But my kids are doing stuff on their own terms and are initiating it, seeing it through, and then basking in the experience afterwards and the ripple effect of how they've made commitments. And one thing that I'll just add is that my youngest is 9 and doesn't show any interest in any of this stuff. Like, he just is in the most selfish time of his life because he has this incredibly spacious, luxurious rhythm. And now I've worked out, He's so fiery. I mean, if I had known, would I have gone for a 4th? That's the eternal question. I mean, we'll keep him now he's here. But the thing is that he is so fiery, and I'm like, there's no point me pushing him on anything. He refuses to learn to read. And I'm like, well, at some point you're going to need it, mate. I'm absolutely certain he will be an adult and he'll be able to read. Will he have a label of dyslexia? If someone else wants to give it to him, I don't know. I actually don't know if he's dyslexic because right now he's not consenting on that. So my way of, educating my kids is so committed to their consent that he gets exposed to words and English and literacy, but it's not in a very traditional way. And I'm really curious to see how this goes. I have absolute confidence because the kid is wily, so he's definitely got some neurons firing up there. But can he learn in the traditional way? No, it's not a fit for him. So at the moment, I just observe he's in this beautifully selfish space, which is, absolute whole self-love, if we want to reframe. And at some point, he will grow in consciousness to be more aware of his community. And I can see that all that will come when the time is right. But like a baby that's choosing its birthday, I'm not forcing it. I'm literally just keeping the invitation open and constantly offering different ways to learn to help ignite that, just trying to work out what piece of the puzzle would lead us to the next step. And from that point of view, it's very exciting. It's terrifying, but exciting. But one thing I want to do is just always be really open with parents. That's what's going on for me. Like, I don't have the answers, but I'm sure as heck not trying the old version that I see as being very harmful, particularly for him. So I'm happy to be out the front, leading the charge on a new way to parent our kids and foster that love of learning.
There's so much uncertainty that we would say we have in so many aspects of our lives, but for whatever reason, when it comes to our children's education, we feel like we need to have this perfectly designed roadmap until they're the age of 18 and then they go to university that fits everybody. Apparently, it's going to work the exact same. But what you've just so perfectly articulated there is that you operate with trust, knowing that you, as their parents, are able to observe them and see everything about them and know who they are and trust that they are going to be exactly on the path that they need to be, and you're going to be there to pick them up when they fall. You're going to be there to inspire them when they need a little bit of inspiration. You're going to be there to give them a little bit of a hug when things don't go right, but you're also going to be there to be their number one cheerleader when the time comes. And when they ask a question, you're also going to be there and point them in the direction of maybe the people that do have the answers for the questions that they do have. I spent many years in the classroom and I never had all the answers. And you just said there that your children went and became, one of your daughters went and worked with horses and negotiated her own lessons. What an experience that is. She went out and sought her own mastery. And I just find that so inspiring to know that there are people like you out there. And I'm certain that everyone that listens to this that is currently deciding whether this is something that they want to do or is completely unaware that this is something that they can do will feel inspired by that, to know that their children, that they are the parents of, that they have their best interests at heart, and that they can trust that through their own experience that they will go and find the way, just like we did. So we've had moments where we fell over and no one was there putting the roadmap out for us. And for us as parents, we've got to do that as well. So I find that really inspiring. And I thank you for sharing that, because I think that's, if I take anything from this, it'll be that message there. I just want to let everyone know that if they do have any questions of their own, to pop their hands up, because we want to respect your time. We only have 15 minutes to go. And as there are no hands up at this moment, I'll ask one more until hands do pop up. You mentioned university and higher education. Do you have any advice or experience that you've currently had for families that are concerned about what higher education might look like in this unschooling world?
Oh, look, it's very, very possible. So I guess that was a big part of my journey, because my daughter always wanted to go to university, yet through the schooling system, she was, I guess, becoming further and further away from that being an option, following the traditional path. So it really made me explore what were the options for her if she didn't finish school. And there are so many. This is the one thing that really frustrated me about her experience, was that there's a system that's called unscored VCE, and we knew about it before the school told us about it for her, because her mental health was in such a dire position that we had to look at other options. And unfortunately, she was listening to the school, and, had her mind set on this particular path. And we were really wanting to do anything we could to actually pull her out of school. And she just was, on her path. And so we realised that there's something called unscored. And so this whole thing about the ATAR score, all parents are talking about it. They've got to get a good ATAR. They've got to get a good ATAR. Well, the ATAR score gives you the opportunity to go into a university course. You have to make that decision on your ATAR at the end of your schooling. So, at the end of year 12, you have to make a decision on it. And then that is the course you go into. After 12 months, that ATAR is no longer relevant. It's no longer relevant for anything going forward. Now, many parents don't even realise that. But what you can easily do is you can enter into university, into a TAFE, or maybe more the university system as a mature age student only 2 or 3 years after finishing year 12. There's also something called Open University, whereby a lot of the homeschoolers who love learning and just can't wait to get their teeth into something really juicy, they end up going to Open University at the age of 15 and they just do a single subject at Open University. Like, that is just so possible. And it's just not spoken about through the schooling system. And I think it's all a funding and it's all a relationship that they build from a business model perspective. But there are so many ways to go on to further education. My daughter ended up doing an unscored year 12 because she was just so determined to finish year 12 and get that sort of certification, because she'd worked so hard for it on different levels. And now she's at TAFE. So she took a year out. Possibly it was a year and a half, but she took time out to just recalibrate, to decompress from the whole schooling system. And I think there's a real danger towards kids going straight into the education system straight into the university system, because all they know, a bit like you, Jono, is all you know is the system. And so, when you go from one system to the next, you're sort of not really seeing beyond that. And I think what's really nice is that kids can take a break between, say, year 12 and university and really work out who they are. Go and have some fun. Go and explore, the world around them in whatever way. Go and do something that just really lights you up, because they've been so set in the system that has told them what to learn, how to learn, by when and all the rest of it. So I think they really don't have any sense of, well, what do I enjoy doing? So I'm a really big advocate for kids having a break after year 12 and knowing that they can actually make a choice down the line. Because there's a lot of kids, and there's been a lot of research around the fact that many adults don't even use, and Jodes was an example, don't even use the degree that they did. And those university courses are expensive, so they put you into a place of debt as well, and debt over a course that you've got no idea really whether you want to do it long term. Often I know of another young child who's doing architecture, which is a really long degree, I found out, and he's not even stepped foot into an architecture's office. And you kind of go, so why did you make that? It sounded good at the time. I enjoyed it at school, doing those sort of things. So therefore, maybe that's just what I'll do. So they set themselves on this path of also high debt and this sense of, I've got to do this because I've invested so much into it. So, and then they don't know how to get out of it. So I'm really a big believer that a lot of these kids actually can take a break at the end of year 12, find out who they are, find out what they really love doing, and then they can choose a university degree or a course if that's what they really want to do. And you can enter it without an ATAR. You might just have to do a test on, English comprehension or reading. They're not that hard. And, if someone's really motivated, when they are motivated, they'll do well. They'll probably study if they need to for a couple of weeks on what that test might be. They go do the test and then suddenly they're in. But they're doing something that really feels in alignment to who they are as a person beyond the system. So, yeah, there are lots of different ways. And that's the misconception. That is the bit that a lot of parents are really fearful about, is what happens if they don't finish? Where do they go? What are their options? There are endless options.
Yeah.
And I cannot stress that enough.
Because it's a user pays situation where students are acquiring the debt in higher levels in tertiary education, it will always be available, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It's a commercial exercise.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the other thing that I think I want to give as food for thought is that I've said to my kids, you will never be as cheap and useful as you are in your mid to late teens.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly before you become an adult, right? So they can work from 15. There are requirements in terms of how much work they can do, paid work as a registered homeschooler. But if you're changing up your kids' education, and obviously even if you're following, say, an Apogee model, there's still so much spaciousness in the kids' lives. They're not exhausted. And I think this is a reframe we need for parents. When they go to traditional educational institutions, it's like a full-time job because you're kind of doing shit you don't necessarily want to do. You have your breaks when you're told. You have to be there 5 days a week. Like, it makes the weeks of the year chew through pretty fast. And then we've got this overcommitment for extracurricular activities. So we, give our kids the best opportunity when in fact we could be efficient and just whack that in the middle of the day as well. So one of the things that I think is really important for our reframe for parents is thinking about if they show interest in stuff, get them into the actual workplaces where this happens. And I've got more front than Myers now about that kind of stuff. I never used to because I was like, I don't want to be an imposition. And I was like, my kids are super helpful, useful and sensible. They are a great asset everywhere. So some of the things that my kids have done, which is all part of their schooling because they're working for free, is obviously they've done front of house stuff. They've done event kind of waitering. They've gone and worked for a friend who has a combi business. They've done some electrical apprenticeship sort of stuff, not apprenticeship, but just being a helper, doing all the stuff the electrician doesn't want to do, obviously. They've done hands-on building things, mentorship, where they've actually run groups of younger children and run day programs and helped the program leaders. So that was actually a nature program that they've done.
They've got their own business?
Oh, they've done their own business. They've created slideshows. They've done some social media.
Social media, yeah.
So what it is it's actually about thinking outside the box, but there's a vocational relevance for them. And then what happens is as they start getting interested and find what lights them up, then you say, okay, if you want to go into a higher education and get a ticket, then this is what you want to go and do. But at least it's relevant and they're walking in knowing. They're not turning up at uni going, I'll do an arts degree because I'm meant to go to uni. I mean, that's what I did.
That's common.
And I had to deprogram that.
Yeah.
I thought that was a success. If you went to uni, then you were the smart ones and you read The Age and watched the ABC. And, if you went to TAFE, maybe you were white, blue collar, and if you didn't, then you were just a loser. And that, that's my snobbery coming through, but I had to let all that go. And we are absolutely rewriting it for our kids where I say, learn what interests you, because when you love it, it will not be hard work. You will just keep expanding and stuff will keep showing up for you as an opportunity.
Ain't it amazing that through our children we can start to unravel some of the programs that were put into our own mind just by watching these beautiful little divine creations interact with the world and embrace it for the first time. It's pretty fascinating experience for Tembi and I as we watch our little one take on the world. She's only she's not even 3 yet, so we've got the whole world in front of us.
Yeah.
But we've had a couple of questions come through asking about the school socialization. So that's one that often comes up.
Oh, yeah.
We get a lot.
And then the events that kids would miss out on that you commonly have at school, like sport days and discos and all the events that come with school. Can you talk a little bit about how you interfaced with those challenges?
Well, I think firstly it's, and this is not meant to be offensive, it's an adult mentality that they miss out. Kids don't miss out. They find their fun. And one of the things that we think is that kids are over-socialised. Now, my kids are used to hanging out with 5 other different personalities, 2 being their parents. So they're used to hanging out with more people, but they're used to hanging out with different ages. And so what happens is you naturally, as part of your own mental health as a parent, want to get out of the house at least once a week. And so we just formed a homeschool catch-up group with the criteria was we had to like the parents, basically. We didn't really care too much about the kids. And that actually brings in a really interesting mix of relationships for the kids, but they're all different ages, and they've been like from 5 through to 17 when we started.
Yeah.
They're all getting along now. So there are opportunities to create your own social networks, and the kids definitely do too. But one of the other things that I've observed in my kids, and I think why I want to bring this to your attention is it's illustrative, is that my eldest, who's 17, has essentially 2 friends. One lives here, one lives in Canada. My next child has one friend who is like her soul sister, and then a couple that are okay, but she kind of has to put up with their crap sometimes, and she doesn't like that, right? They don't speak nicely about other people, and just her values are a little bit different to them, so she judges that. The next one down had a bestie, and then they just grew apart, and he hasn't tried to replace that, right? He's actually just loves being in books. He reads novels with an absolute thirst for the info. And then the youngest one essentially has 1 or 2 kids that he really bonds with, and he actively creates those social gatherings. And that's separate to our weekly homeschool catch-up. So what that's showing me, even though all my kids are vastly different personalities, some more outgoing than others, they actually don't have a need for a whole lot of engagement. That is an outside belief system, and particularly a parental belief system as well, that my kids need to hang out with other people. Because when I approach them from a place of consent, they actually don't ask for it. They're not engineering it. And I am very supportive of that. I'm like, you want to catch up with so-and-so, let's make it happen. But it doesn't get asked. And I think that's really interesting. That can only come from when we pause and allow the kid to dictate that speed of how they do their life, how they do their daily rhythm. And it reveals itself over time, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I think when you look at kids in a school environment, there's a lot of I don't know whether competition's the right way, but certainly comparison is like, well, they've got friends and I don't. So then suddenly there's this desire that they should be. There's that
very loaded.
It's like, oh, well, does that make something wrong with me because they're all hanging out and I'm actually happy over here, but maybe I shouldn't be happy over here. Maybe there's something wrong. So I feel like when they don't have that environment where they're constantly comparing to other people, other kids, they're actually really secure within themselves. And then also the relationships that they're forming are really true, authentic relationships, ones that they can trust, ones
very deep.
Very deep. And I know that when our kids get together, like, they don't see each other all the time, especially our oldest boys who are really close. But when they do, they just hang out. Like they just know that when they're together, it's easy, it's true, it's authentic, it's heart-based. They can talk about anything. And, I just think the relationships are so much richer. They're not forced upon them.
No.
They don't have to be the same age. My son's the oldest of the homeschool community, and he just loves hanging with the younger kids. Like there's no rules around what age he enjoys being with. He's happy to socialize with all of them and have some fun with all of them. And then that makes him a really good role model for the younger kids as well, because they look up to him. And, that then makes them realize what the value of being the older one in the group is. I think there's some real richness in that. And when we sort of think that they can only socialize in the school system
with their own age,
at the age or the grade that they're in. And then you think, what happens if I don't get along with those kids in that grade? But I actually really like the older ones. But that's sort of shunned upon or sort of seen as being a bad thing.
A bit untidy. You've got to stay in your lane.
So that, socialising, as we know, is not a problem, but we do appreciate it is everyone's concern because that's what society's telling us.
Yeah, it really it's one of the top 5 concerns that parents have. And I understand it's a real one because no one wants your child to feel alone and without community. But with time, they will create it. The other thing we've done is that just because we, sort of formed our own homeschool crew, we also have a camp every year that the kids organise, and we go camping as a bunch of families, and we only do it for 3 or 4 days, but they absolutely love it.
Love it.
So that's possible. The other thing is, I mean, you guys are in the sunny coast, right? But this goes for anywhere in Australia. Unless you are absolutely remote, you'll find your community. There are so many people out there now that are looking at alternate education. So there is an opportunity to engage in any number of things. And one of the things that you tend to do is you get more creative. So
yes, you really do.
even cycling back to the ninja stuff, they didn't have a homeschool class. And myself and one of the other mums went, oh, we don't have to go after school. Like, the traffic is just terrible. So we campaigned for this company to create a homeschool class for them. And then it got so full, it got booked out, and they were going to add another one. So you can actually create change within your community. You just need to have some motivation and look for where those opportunities are. And again, taking your lead from your kids. Hey, what do you want to do? Do you want to do this in a different way?
Yeah.
It becomes really easy. But I think that you can't know that until you've done it. You know, you need to have, again, that opportunity for a circuit breaker, create spaciousness for then things just to settle down, and what is meant to pop its head up will pop its head up, and you will, negotiate that in exactly the right time that you need to.
Yeah.
I find that such a perfect way to wrap this up with, you get to create it all on your own. And that's the beauty of this whole journey, is that no one's here to tell you what to do or how to do it. You get to decide. Everything is our choice. Your kids will show you the way. And the beauty of it is that we get to be the ones that sit alongside or ride alongside and watch them create this wonderful world for themselves, and not have any form of coercion or outside influence that is negative in any way. And we just get to be the guardrails until they become these wonderful humans, because I think any parent would say that they want their children to one day outshine them and create something far greater than we were able to. That would be my marker of success as a father, is that my children go out and create something far more wonderful than I'm ever going to be able to create. That'll be the greatest success. We are over the hour, but we've just had one more come through. So if it's all right.
Yep.
It's around the stress of finding the right curriculum or learning tools. Now, this is a question that would be specifically for the younger children that are learning to read, write, arithmetic, that kind of thing, the core academics of homeschooling. For those families that don't have that background in those things, what were the ways that you found around it? You touched on it earlier with your son and his reading, but if you could just break that down, and then we can wrap it up.
Well, there are many ways to do it. So many ways. So what we talk about in Take the Leap is one of the focuses we have is working out what kind of learner your child is. And you can probably even observe that now. So if you start getting an idea on, how your 4 or 5-year-old, your pre-prep child learns, you'll find that then you can move towards a program that actually supports that sort of learning. Most learning is very much done by reading or auditory, right? Because kids are sitting in a classroom and they're literally reading stuff, or they're hearing stuff and learning that way. My sneaking suspicion is most children are kinesthetic. They want to just pull stuff out from underneath the sink and work out which bits are toxic and which stuff is okay and what's a sponge and what it does. And they work it out by touching and feeling. And yes, it's the bane of every mother who wants to put everything back in underneath the sink, but it's also the rite of passage of parenting. And it's a moment in time we miss, because the kids are showing us, I learn this way. I have a thirst for learning this way. And we forget to encourage that. So what I would say is start first by getting into a space of observership with your child. Observe how they conduct themselves without your input at all. Just observe them. And then the other thing I would say is always work out ways to enmesh nature in their learning. Even if they're doing a programs like Euchre are very curriculum based, but if you replace school at home with basically school at home, to ensure proper integration and proper grounding and healthy brain health,
Yeah.
get them outside, jumping on the trampoline, riding their bike, doing anything that gets the left and right brain talking to itself so they can integrate the information and give themselves the very best opportunity to springboard forward on whatever they've been exposing themselves to. And quite apart from that, as you know, you guys might well be too, we're quite crunchy. So getting them away from electronic fields and electric fields and giving them an opportunity to ground into earth energies, get dirty, hang out with the trees, breathe some fresh air, see the sun. All of that stuff is super powerful for them and will accent their learning in a very positive way, but also their mental health too. So if that answers.
There's a pretty strong community of the crunchy mamas up here on the sunny coast, so I think you'll be speaking to them on that level there. Before we wrap up, what can we do to support Quantimama and to support you both with what you're creating with Take the Leap?
Yeah, look, I guess just it really is just letting people know that we're here to support the families, we're here to support the parents, those who are feeling really alone and overwhelmed by the fact that their kids are struggling in the school system, that there are solutions, there are alternatives that you can actually, take that first step of looking outside of the system and investigating what your options are. Know that the school is not going to be necessarily the greatest advocate for your child. They're not going to give you the solutions. They'll just keep trying to sort of encourage you to keep going back into the system, and they'll try and make it as easy as possible. But ultimately, I think it's about helping parents really step aside and consider what the alternatives are. And there are lots of different ways of doing this. We don't prescribe to it has to be homeschooling. It can be anything, you really get to decide. But the most important thing is let people know that we're there to support them on that journey. The Take the Leap program is really a powerful program. It's not long. It's not a huge investment, but it's going to be life-changing if you dive in and just kind of consider what your options are, especially if the kids are being harmed, especially if they're hurting, especially if they're losing sense of self. And as a parent, you're feeling overwhelmed and hopeless or helpless.
Or even before that.
Or hopefully before that,
that.
Especially the young kids. We've found a lot of people coming to us who are of the kids aren't even at school yet.
Like 3.
I mean, in many respects, that's the best time to really start exploring this as an option. But many have already started it because it's all they know. And so for those who are all in the system and just not sure what to do about it because it's not working for them, then, just send them our way. We love to support them. We're doing half-hour fortnightly sessions called First Steps, where we want to just introduce a basic concept. We talk a little bit about it, and then we give them some reflective exercises where they can just sort of start going, okay, how do I see my child or myself or my family in this position, and what can I do about it? So they're just half-hour Zoom calls on a fortnightly basis that we're
starting next month.
Starting next month, because we just want people to start questioning and to start getting curious about what are the options.
Yep, they're $10, and you just get to show up for half an hour, and we'll do our best not to talk too long, because we do talk very well, don't we?
Yeah.
Not that I'm saying we talk very well, but we talk for a while. That's why it makes us so qualified for podcasting. But yeah, look, just share the love, because we're two people. I'm absolutely useless at socials, because when I get an overwhelm and I'm not paying attention to my kids, I shut down stuff like social media. I can't be present for everyone else if I'm neglecting my children. I must be a woman of my word with this stuff. So our interest is absolutely from a heart perspective. We are here to help other parents because we journeyed that too, and we know the kids are just waiting for the parents to wake up to this. However that happens, right? For us, it was an invitation of an injection that we didn't want. For other people, it will be something else. But your kids already know what they need. They're just hoping that the parents will pick up on whatever thread is the invitation for that change.
Yep.
And again, you don't need to make wholesale change, but we've got to start paying attention to our kids. They are ready and waiting for it. So just share the love and just support each other. because that's how we grow this, and the children thrive quite naturally. But yeah, thank you for the opportunity. We're very grateful. We're very grateful there are, programs like Apogee out there, and the fact that you two have brought this to Australia, that is an absolute gift. And may it be like a gremlin in water and replicate all the way over Australia, so that many more kids can, be held in that beautiful embrace. It really is such a positive thing for our community.
Thank you.
Well, we thank you so much for those kind words, and we thank you for joining us today, I guess, and for this information that gets to go out to all those families and teachers out there also. So thank you very much, Jodi, and thank you very much, Kerrie.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank